Today we have part 3 of the story with the headline, War's Bravest Deeds, Recollections of Episodes of Heroism by Land and Sea. The subheadline says, Stirring Contributions from Colonel N.T. Willis, Major Alfred R. Calhoun, Captain George P. Singer, Edward Dawn. Today's installment is told by Captain Edward Dawn. It says, I saw hard service from Mill Springs in Kentucky till the surrender of General Joe Johnston in North Carolina. But at the risk of being considered odd, I will venture the statement that the finest deeds of daring were not those exhibited on great battlefields, and because of this, many of them will pass away unrecorded. For instance, there is the case of Sergeant James Owens of the 1st Kentucky, which I think the most thrillingly daring incident of the war, and I am glad of the opportunity to keep it from sinking into oblivion. In November 1863, 2 divisions of the 9th Corps were besieged in Knoxville, East Tennessee, by General Longstreet. I was in the besieged city at the time with a company of dismounted cavalry. The weather was bitterly cold, rations were reduced and uncertain, and there was a pretty general feeling that if relief did not soon reach us from Chattanooga, that we would be starved into a surrender. It will be remembered that immediately after the Battle of Missionary Ridge, General Sherman was ordered to march north with all speed and relieve Burnside, and it was all important that Burnside should know that relief was coming. After much searching, a man was found who knew the country as well as if he had built it, and who was ready to carry the news of coming help to the beleaguered garrison. A brave heart, a good horse, and fine roads were desirable, but the first of these was the only necessity Sergeant James Owens of the 1st Kentucky had. All the horses were reduced to skeletons, and the roads were frightful. In addition to these drawbacks, the scout must travel in disguise, for to venture outside the Union lines in the regular uniform would have been a sort of suicide. Owens must go as a Confederate. He was as intelligent as he was brave, and so knew that this was an undertaking on which even the commander-in-chief himself could not order him. Yet for the good of the cause, he volunteered promptly, as soon as he learned what was needed. Wheeler's, Wharton's, and Morgan's Confederate cavalry swarmed in the country over which Owens must ride alone, and after this was successfully done, there was the well-guarded lines of Longstreet which must be passed before his mission was ended. Once outside the Union lines, the sergeant was a Confederate in appearance, but a spy with a halter awaiting him if detected. He kept away from the direct roads, representing to the casual bands he met up with that he was on his way to join Longstreet. After traveling constantly for 30 hours, his horse dropped under him, and he shot the poor creature to put it out of its misery. Then he resumed his journey on foot. Just at daybreak on the morning of November 28th, I was in command of the pickets along the Holston River, when I was startled by hearing yells and shots on the other side where the enemy's pickets had been very quiet. While I was wondering what the uproar meant, I could see in the indistinct light a man running like a deer for the river, with a lot of other men on foot and a few mounted, were speeding after him and firing wildly as they ran. My first impression was that the fugitive was one of the enemy who had been discovered in the act of deserting to our lines, but be that as it might, the fact that they were trying to kill him was to us sufficient reason for trying to save him, and on the instant we opened fire on the pursuers. Straight for the river the man headed, the shouts and the shots increasing. He reached the bank, but unheeding the swollen ice-covered current, he dove in without an instant's hesitation. By this time, our firing had called out the nearest regiment, and over the head of the daring swimmer, our rifles opened on the enemy, who instead of returning our fire, still directed their attention to the fugitive. The bullets cut and splashed and ricocheted about him, and it seemed that he must be killed before he reached our side. He was about 100 feet from the bank when he suddenly stopped and threw up one hand. On the instant, 2 men leaped in and hurried to his aid. They brought him to the shore, with his left arm broken. He was carried out of fire, looking like a dying man, but inspired by his purpose. Owens, before he fainted, had the strength to reveal himself and to cheer the troops in Knoxville with the thrilling news that Sherman was pressing north to our relief. Owens survived the struggle and came out with a commission, and I have always regarded his exploit as the bravest act that came under my notice during the war. This installment was written by Edward Dawn. This story came from the great state of Wisconsin, being reported in the newspaper library of March 31st, 1894. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, Then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.